My sister presented me a job application at dinner. You can't provide for your son, she scoffed. It was for a cleaning role at her business. My son's face flushed red. I handed it back, stating, my assistant will handle this. I own the building your company occupies. Her jaw dropped. Dad declared, Jennifer, enough. Yet, I hadn't even presented them the lease. The burgundy folder slid across the mahogany table, stopping just inches from my water glass. I didn't need to touch it. The embossed logo of Hartwell and Associates, Jennifer's law firm, was a glaring red flag. My sister's smile, perfectly painted and unwavering across the table, felt less like an invitation and more like a challenge. What's this? I asked, a tight knot forming in my stomach, because the predatory gleam in her eye already told me the answer wouldn't be good. She dabbed delicately at the corner of her mouth with a napkin, her diamond bracelet catching the chandelier light and flashing like a tiny, aggressive signal. Just a little something that might help, she purred. We're hiring for several positions. I thought of you immediately. My 9-year-old son, Lucas, sat beside me, his fork frozen halfway to his mouth, a single green bean dangling precariously. Across the table, my mother shifted uncomfortably, a familiar tell. Dad cleared his throat, a sound I'd heard countless times when family tension mounted. Only Jennifer's husband, Trevor, seemed amused, a faint smirk playing at his lips as he topped off his wine glass. I opened the folder. Inside, crisp and impersonal, was an application for a janitorial position. Starting pay, $14 an hour. Part-time, evening shift. The paper felt cold beneath my fingertips. You want me to apply to be a janitor at your firm? The words came out flatter than I intended, devoid of the emotion churning inside me. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs, a warning signal. Jennifer's smile never wavered. It's honest work, and since you're clearly struggling to provide for Lucas, I figured something stable would help. The benefits are actually quite good for that level. I felt a hot wave of shame wash over me, not for myself, but for Lucas. His face flushed crimson, his gaze dropping to his plate, suddenly fascinated by the patterns he could make pushing green beans around. It was a familiar retreat. Jennifer, maybe this isn't the time, Mom started, her voice hushed, but my sister waved her off with an impatient flick of her wrist. When is the time, Mother? She shows up to family dinners in the same 3 outfits. Lucas is wearing shoes from last year that are clearly too small. I'm trying to help. Lucas mumbled something barely audible, my shoes are fine. But his ears had turned a deep, angry red. Trevor chuckled, the sound cutting through the strained silence. Come on, it's not charity. She'd have to actually work for it. Show up on time. Follow instructions. Think you can manage that? The condescension dripped from every syllable, coating the air like a thick, unpleasant fog. My hands clenched beneath the table. I took a slow, deliberate breath, forcing air into my burning lungs, before folding the application back into its folder. Jennifer had always been competitive, always needed to be the successful one, the star. But this crossed a line I hadn't known existed, a boundary not just of respect, but of basic human decency. That's very thoughtful, I said, carefully modulating my voice, keeping it even, though my jaw ached with the effort. But I'll have to pass. Jennifer shook her head, exchanging a knowing, pitying look with Trevor. Pride, she sighed, as if diagnosing a chronic illness. This is exactly your problem. You're too proud to accept help when you clearly need it. Do you know what Lucas told me last week? That he can't join the robotics club because the fees are too high. A child shouldn't have to miss out because his mother is too stubborn. My blood ran cold. Lucas had gone completely still beside me, a small statue of humiliation. I could feel the shame radiating off him in palpable waves, and in that moment, something inside me snapped. Here's the thing about sibling rivalry. It's rarely just about the current moment. It's a deep-seated dynamic often fueled by a constant comparison and a need to establish dominance. Jennifer's behavior, particularly her need to highlight my perceived struggles and broadcast Lucas's personal disclosures, was a classic manifestation of projection and status anxiety. By attempting to fix me, she reinforced her own sense of superiority, likely a coping mechanism for her own insecurities, creating a social dynamic where my perceived failure served to bolster her self-worth. Actually, I said, sliding the folder back across the table, my voice gaining an icy calm that surprised even me. I'll pass this along to my assistant. She handles our building staffing needs. Jennifer blinked, her perfect smile faltering. Your assistant? Her tone was laced with confusion. For the property management company I own. You know, the one that owns the building where Hartwell and Associates rents their offices. I took a slow sip of water, the cool liquid a welcome contrast to the fire in my veins, watching her expression shift from confusion to disbelief, then to something akin to horror. Small world, isn't it? The color drained from Jennifer's face, leaving her complexion pasty under the chandelier light. Trevor's smug smirk vanished, replaced by a rigid, unreadable mask. Jennifer, stop, Dad said quietly, a plea, but the damage was already spiraling, a car crash in slow motion. That's impossible, Jennifer stammered, her voice thin and reedy. The building is owned by some corporation. Cascade Holdings or something. I corrected her, my voice clear and steady, every word landing with precision. Cascade Property Holdings. I established it 13 years ago, right after my divorce. Started with one small commercial building downtown, then expanded. Your offices are in my fourth acquisition. The lease comes up for renewal in about 8 months, actually. Mom's eyes had gone wide, her fork clattering softly against her plate. Dad was staring at me like he'd never seen me before, his mouth slightly agape. You're lying. Jennifer's voice had taken on a shrill edge, a desperate, frantic sound. You drive a 10-year-old sedan. You live in that tiny rental house. You're trying to embarrass me in front of everyone. I pulled out my phone, navigating to my email. Would you like to see the correspondence between your office manager and my property team? There was some issue with the HVAC system last month, or I could show you the wire transfer from your firm's rent payment. It hit my account on the 1st, same as always. Lucas was looking at me now, his expression somewhere between confused and hopeful, a flicker of nascent pride in his eyes. Trevor had gone very quiet. He worked in commercial real estate himself, which meant he probably understood the numbers better than Jennifer did. The building that housed Hartwell and Associates sat in the premium downtown corridor. The monthly rent for their floor alone would have been staggering. Why wouldn't you tell us? Mom's voice was soft, laced with a familiar hurt. But what I found next, what spilled out into that quiet dining room, well, that's a story I never thought I'd tell. I set my phone down. Because it was easier this way. No expectations, no questions about money, no assumptions about what I could or should do with it. For individuals who have experienced constant scrutiny or judgment, strategic withholding of personal information, even significant successes, can become a deeply ingrained coping mechanism. It provides a sense of control over their narrative and protects their emotional boundaries, albeit at the cost of genuine intimacy and understanding from those closest to them. You let us think you were struggling. Jennifer's shock was morphing into raw anger, her face tightening with indignation. You let me worry about you, talk to my partners about finding you a position, and all along you've been what? Playing poor. I met her gaze evenly. I never said I was struggling. You assumed that because I don't broadcast my finances or live extravagantly. There's a difference. The shoes. Trevor interjected, his voice surprisingly firm. Your kid's wearing shoes that don't fit. Lucas, who had been listening intently, lifted his head. My shoes fit fine. Mom asked if I wanted new ones last month. I said no because I like these. The robotics club? Jennifer pressed, seizing on the detail. I told you the fees seemed expensive, Lucas said, his voice gaining strength. Not that we couldn't afford it. I wasn't sure I wanted to join anyway. I watched my sister process this, seeing her mental narrative unravel in real time. Every assumption she'd made, every pitying look, every condescending comment about budgeting and making smarter choices, all of it collapsing. How much? Dad asked, cutting through the stunned silence. How much is the company worth? Dad, that's not really. I sighed. The air was thick with expectation. The property holdings are valued at about $42 million. That includes the 8 buildings I own directly, plus the property management company itself and its contracts. Give or take. Mom actually gasped, a small, involuntary sound. Jennifer looked like she might be sick, her complexion a mottled green. And you didn't think to mention this? Jennifer's hands were shaking, trembling slightly as she clutched her wine glass. Do you have any idea how I've looked? Talking about you at work, telling people my sister was going through a rough patch. I got you that job application because I told my managing partner about your situation. He approved the direct hire as a favor to me. A favor I never asked for because you were too busy lying to everyone. I never lied. My voice came out sharper than intended, the raw edge finally showing. I simply didn't correct your assumptions. You wanted to believe I was failing, so you did. It made you feel better about yourself. The silence that followed was deafening, heavy, and suffocating. Even the distant clink of silverware from the kitchen had stopped. Jennifer stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor with a harsh, grating sound that made everyone wince. This is unbelievable. Trevor, we're leaving. Jen, sit down, Dad said, his voice unusually stern. But she was already grabbing her purse, her movements jerky and agitated. No, I'm not going to sit here and be humiliated. She's been making a fool of me for years. You did that yourself, I said quietly, the years of suppressed frustration finally boiling over, my voice shaking with a controlled fury. Every time you bought Lucas clearance rack clothes for his birthday while bragging about Trevor's bonus. Every time you suggested I shop at discount stores or clip coupons. Every time you made sure everyone knew how much better you were doing than me because you thought I needed help. No, you wanted to be the successful one. You needed me to be struggling so you could feel superior. The words came out before I could stop them, a torrent of swallowed resentment finally breaking free. When we were kids, you couldn't stand that I got better grades. When I got into Stanford and you didn't, you told everyone I only got in because of affirmative action. When I married David, you spent the whole wedding telling people he was settling. That's not fair. You spent my entire life trying to compete with me. And the only way you could win was by changing the scorecard. So when I got divorced and downsized, you saw an opportunity. Finally, something you could be better at. Finally, proof that you'd made the right choices. Mom had tears in her eyes, her face etched with pain. Dad was staring at his plate, looking utterly defeated. Trevor looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on Earth. I thought we were close, Jennifer whispered, her voice cracking. We were, I countered, before you decided my life was a project you needed to fix. Lucas tugged at my sleeve, his small hand a grounding presence. Mom, can we go? Looking at my son's uncomfortable face, I realized how unfair this entire spectacle was to him. He didn't need to witness his mother and aunt tearing into each other, didn't need to carry the weight of our dysfunction. Yeah, sweetheart. We can go. Wait. Dad's voice cut through the tension, firm and unexpected. Everyone just wait. We all turned to him. He'd been quiet through most of dinner, as he usually was during family gatherings, but something in his tone now demanded attention. Jennifer, sit down. My sister hesitated, then slowly sank back into her chair, her shoulders slumped. Dad looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw something shift in his expression, a flicker of genuine curiosity replacing the shock. $42 million. The company's valuation. Yes. How did you do it? The question caught me off guard. Not accusatory, just genuinely curious. After the divorce, I took my half of the settlement plus my inheritance from Grandma Rose and bought a small commercial building that was about to go into foreclosure. The location was good. The previous owner had just been bad at management. I fixed it up, filled the vacancies, and used the income to secure a loan for a second property. Then a third. The market was right. I made smart choices and I worked hard. Really hard. While raising Lucas alone, Mom added softly, her voice thick with emotion. While raising Lucas. Yes. Jennifer was staring at the table, picking at a loose thread on her napkin. I didn't know you bought buildings. I thought you worked in data entry. I do property management for my own company. Tenant relations, maintenance coordination, financial oversight, all of it. I handle most of the administrative work myself to keep overhead low. I softened my tone slightly, realizing the conversation had taken a new turn, away from accusation and toward understanding. Jen, I never wanted to make you feel bad. I just wanted to live my life without constant commentary. So, you let me hand you a janitor application in front of your son. The accusation hung there, valid and cutting. My chest tightened. You're right. I admit it. I could have told you privately, but honestly, after years of you treating me like a charity case, watching you try to humiliate me in front of Lucas felt like the last straw. I'm sorry he had to see this, but I'm not sorry for defending myself. Trevor cleared his throat. For what it's worth, this is the most interesting family dinner we've had in years. It surprised a short, genuine laugh out of me, a bubble of unexpected lightness. Even Jennifer's lips twitched, a fleeting glimpse of her old self. Your lease really comes up in 8 months, she asked, the tension in her voice still present but softened. October 15th. Are you going to renew it? I consider the question, the power dynamic having irrevocably shifted. That depends on whether your firm continues to be a good tenant. The property manager says you've never been late on rent. You report maintenance issues promptly, and you haven't violated any terms of the agreement, so probably. You're not going to jack up the rent to punish me. Why would I? That would be bad business. I paused, letting the implication sink in. Though if you're worried about it, you could always apply for that janitorial position. I hear the benefits are quite good. For a moment, nobody breathed. Then Lucas let out a surprised giggle, a joyous, uncontrolled sound. Jennifer's eyes widened, and then, incredibly, she started laughing too. Real laughter, not the brutal social kind, but deep, genuine amusement. I deserve that, she said, wiping at her eyes, a tear tracking a path through her smeared makeup. I absolutely deserve that. Mom looked between us uncertainly. So, we're okay? I don't know, I said honestly, the moment feeling fragile. But maybe we can work toward okay. Jennifer nodded slowly. I owe you an apology. And Lucas, I'm sorry, sweetheart. That was cruel of me. Lucas shrugged, trying to look nonchalant, but I could see the relief in his face, the tension slowly draining from his small frame. It's fine. It's not fine, but thank you for saying so. Jennifer took a shaky breath. I think I've been jealous of you our whole lives. You've always been smarter, more capable. When you got divorced, I thought, finally we'd be on equal footing. That's awful, isn't it? Pretty awful, I agreed, but honest. Can I ask you something? She met my eyes, her gaze raw and vulnerable. Why did you downsize after the divorce? If you were building this empire, why live in a rental house? Because Lucas needed stability more than he needed a mansion. The house is in a good school district. It's close to his friends, and it's manageable. I didn't want him to grow up thinking money was the measure of everything. I glanced at my son, who was listening intently, his innocent face reflecting a growing understanding. The business is important, but it's not who I am. I didn't want it to define us. Unlike me, you mean? Jennifer's voice was quiet, full of self-reproach. I've been defining myself by my job title and Trevor's salary for years. Trevor shifted uncomfortably. To be fair, you worked hard for that position. I did, but I also used it as a weapon against my own sister. She looked at me again. I don't know how to fix this. Maybe start by treating me like a person instead of a problem to solve. I can try. It wasn't a resolution. Not really. Years of resentment and competition wouldn't evaporate over one dinner, but it was something. Dad cleared his throat again, drawing our attention. Since we're apparently sharing secrets, your mother and I have been thinking about downsizing ourselves. The house is too big now that you girls are gone. Dad, you love the house, Jennifer protested. We do, but we love other things more, like traveling. Your mother wants to see Italy. Mom blushed, a small, shy smile gracing her lips. I mentioned it once. You've mentioned it approximately 600 times in the last year, Dad said dryly. We could sell, buy something smaller, and use the difference to actually live a little. I smiled at that. My parents had always been practical to a fault, saving for a future that never quite arrived. You should do it, I said. Life's too short. Jennifer nodded agreement. You really should. And Mom, if you need help planning the trip, I know a travel agent. Of course you do, I said, but this time there was no venom in it. The moment stretched out, a quiet understanding settling over the table, and then Mom spoke up, her voice tentative. I still don't understand why you kept it secret. Not just from Jennifer, but from all of us. I set down my fork, gathering my thoughts, the question a familiar one that had echoed in my own mind countless times. It started as privacy. After David and I split, everyone had opinions about what I should do, where I should live, how I should raise Lucas. The property investment was mine, something I built without anyone's input or judgment. We wouldn't have judged you, Dad said, a hint of protest in his tone. Wouldn't you, Dad? You told me 3 times that I was making a mistake leaving my corporate job. You said entrepreneurship was risky, especially for a single mother. He had the grace to look uncomfortable, a flush rising to his cheeks. I was worried about stability. I know, and I appreciated the concern, but I needed to prove to myself that I could do this. If I told you from the start, every decision would have come with a chorus of advice and warnings. I needed space to succeed or fail on my own terms. Trevor had been listening carefully, a thoughtful expression on his face. The first building you bought, the foreclosure. That was the Morrison Street property, wasn't it? I glanced at him, surprised. How did you know? I remember hearing about it years ago when I was just getting into commercial real estate. Someone swooped in last minute with a cash offer that was well above asking. The seller accepted immediately. He shook his head with something like admiration. That building's worth quadruple what was paid back then. About that? Yes. I refinanced it a few years ago. Jennifer was staring at her husband, a new wave of shock washing over her. You knew about this? Not that it was her. I just knew someone smart had grabbed a gem. He looked at me with new respect. You saw what I saw. Location, good bones. Terrible management. Fix the management problem and everything else falls into place. Exactly. The previous owner had let maintenance slide, didn't screen tenants properly, and had no system for collecting rent on time. I instituted basic procedures, and occupancy jumped from 60% to 95% within 8 months. Lucas, who had been quiet for a while, now spoke up, a new piece of the puzzle falling into place for him. Is that why we used to drive by that building sometimes? You'd always slow down and look at it. Guilty. I like seeing my investments in person. It keeps things real. Mom was twisting her napkin, her brow furrowed. When you bought the second building, we thought you were struggling so much that you'd taken a second job doing night shifts somewhere. You looked so tired all the time. Because I was working around the clock, managing properties during the day, handling administrative work and tenant issues at night after Lucas went to bed. It was exhausting, but it was also building towards something bigger. You should have let us help, Mom insisted. With what? Babysitting? You already watched Lucas twice a week. Money? I didn't need it. What I needed was time, and nobody could give me that except myself. Jennifer had gone very quiet again, her earlier anger replaced by a fragile vulnerability. I offered to help with Lucas multiple times. You always said no because your help came with strings. You'd watch him and then spend the whole next week telling me everything I was doing wrong, what he should eat, how much screen time was too much, why his bedtime should be earlier. I was trying to be supportive. You were trying to be superior. There's a difference. The truth of it sat heavily between us, unvarnished and raw. Jennifer opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again, her voice barely a whisper. When did I become this person? When did I turn into someone who needs to tear down her own sister to feel good about herself? Dad's expression softened, a deep sadness in his eyes. You've always been competitive, Jenny. Even as a little girl, you needed to win every game, ace every test. It wasn't enough to do well. You had to do better than everyone else. Especially better than me, I added quietly. She didn't deny it, just nodded slowly. I remember when we were in high school. You got chosen for the lead in the school play without even auditioning. They just asked you. I'd been in theater club for 3 years and never got more than ensemble roles. Because you were a terrible actress, I said, but gently, a small smile playing on my lips. You hated being on stage. You only joined because I did. I hated that everything came easily to you. Grades, friends, opportunities. I had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. That's not true. It felt true. And when you married David, this brilliant lawyer from a good family, and I was still dating Trevor, who was just starting out in real estate, I felt like I was losing again. Trevor raised an eyebrow, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. Just starting out? I was 26. You know what I mean? Everyone kept comparing us. Mom's friends would ask about her daughter, the lawyer's wife, and I was the one dating the guy who sold condos. I sell commercial real estate, Trevor corrected mildly. Now you do. Back then you were showing apartments to college students. I studied my sister's face, seeing the insecurity I had somehow missed for years, or perhaps deliberately ignored. You know David and I were miserable, right? The marriage was falling apart before Lucas was even born. We were just good at hiding it. Mom looked stricken, her hand flying to her mouth. You never said anything. Because I was ashamed. I'd made this big choice, had this perfect wedding, and it was all wrong. David wanted a wife who'd host dinner parties and join the country club. I wanted to do something that mattered. We were fundamentally incompatible, and by the time Lucas was born, we were barely speaking. But you stayed for years, Jennifer said, her voice incredulous. For Lucas. And because admitting failure felt impossible. Everyone thought we were the perfect couple. I laughed bitterly. You have no idea how many times I envied you and Jennifer. You actually liked each other. Jennifer and Trevor exchanged glances, a moment of unexpected solidarity. We have our issues, she said. Sure, but you're partners. David saw me as an accessory. When I told him I wanted to buy the Morrison Street building with my inheritance and part of what would be my divorce settlement, he said I was being ridiculous. Called it a fantasy. I told him it wasn't a fantasy, and I didn't need his permission. We had a prenup that kept our finances separate, and Grandma Rose's money was mine alone. That conversation was basically the beginning of the end. We divorced 6 months later. Dad sat back in his chair, a look of revelation on his face. I wondered what you did with that money. Your grandmother left you $250,000, and the divorce settlement was substantial, which became 4 buildings, which became 8, which became the portfolio I have now. Grandma Rose would have approved. She was always telling me to bet on myself. She also told you to divorce David years before you did, Mom said, a faint smile on her face. She had good instincts. I should have listened sooner. Jennifer was processing all of this, her earlier anger transforming into something more complicated. When you got divorced, I threw you a party. Do you remember? The liberation celebration. Yes. I thought I was being supportive. But really, I was celebrating that you finally failed at something. That's horrible. It was pretty horrible, I agreed, but I understood it. Even then, you needed me to be imperfect. I still need that apparently. Otherwise, I wouldn't have handed you that application tonight. Trevor cleared his throat. For the record, I told you it was a bad idea. You did not, I said. I said, and I quote, maybe we should just send her a text about the opening. You're the one who insisted on printing it out and presenting it at dinner. Jennifer's cheeks flushed, a deep red spreading across her face. I wanted everyone to see me helping. I wanted Mom and Dad to witness me being the generous sister. You wanted to humiliate me, I said flatly, the truth echoing between us. Maybe I did. She met my eyes, her gaze unwavering. I'm sorry. Truly. The apology hung in the air, and I found myself believing it. Jennifer had many faults, but she'd never been a liar. What happens now? Mom asked, her voice hushed, a fragile hope in her tone. With the two of you? I don't know, I admitted. This isn't something that gets fixed in one conversation, but it's a start. Is it? Jennifer looked at me, a genuine question in her eyes. I thought about the years of small cuts, the constant comparisons, the exhausting competition. I also thought about childhood summers when we'd been inseparable, building forts in the backyard and inventing elaborate games. That sister was still in there somewhere, buried under layers of insecurity and resentment. It could be, I said finally, if we're both willing to be honest. Actually honest, not performatively honest. What does that mean? It means you stop trying to save me, and I stop letting you think I need saving. It means we have real conversations instead of status updates. It means you deal with why you need me to be less successful than you are. Jennifer flinched, but didn't look away. That's fair. What do you need to do? The question surprised me, shifting the focus inward. I need to stop punishing you for being who you are. And I need to admit that some of my secrecy was about control. If you didn't know about my success, you couldn't comment on it, but you also couldn't share in it. That wasn't fair either. Lucas was watching us with the intensity of a kid who knows something important is happening, but doesn't quite understand what. Dad cleared his throat again, a familiar preamble. Your mother and I should probably take some responsibility here. We set you two against each other from the start. How do you figure that? Jennifer asked, genuinely confused. Every achievement was a comparison. Jennifer got an A, but your sister got an A+. Your sister made the team. Maybe you'll make it next year. We thought we were encouraging you both. Instead, we made everything a competition. Mom was crying now, quiet tears sliding down her cheeks. We were so proud of both of you. We just didn't know how to show it without comparing. It's okay, Mom, I started, reaching for her hand, but she shook her head vehemently. This parental dynamic, where well-intentioned comparisons become the primary mode of expressing pride or encouragement, often inadvertently fosters intense sibling rivalry. Children internalize the message that their worth is conditional on outperforming others, rather than on their inherent value, creating a lifelong struggle for external validation and a competitive posture even with loved ones. It's not okay. We created this dynamic and then acted surprised when you two couldn't just be sisters. When was the last time you called each other just to talk? Not about family events or obligations, just to connect. The silence was damning. I couldn't remember. Years, probably. We're going to do better, Dad said firmly, his eyes sweeping over us. Your mother and I are going to Italy, and we're going to stop mediating between you two. You're grown women. You don't need us to referee. We've been using you as buffers, Jennifer realized, a new insight dawning on her face. Every conversation goes through Mom. Every conflict gets smoothed over before it can actually get resolved. Guilty. I admit it. We finished dinner in a strange new quiet, the tension replaced by something fragile and uncertain, like a newly formed ice sheet. Lucas asked for seconds on dessert, which Mom practically threw at him, clearly desperate for something normal to do. As we were leaving, Jennifer caught my arm, her touch hesitant. Can we have coffee sometime? Just us. I hesitated, and she saw it, her shoulders slumping slightly. Look, I know I don't deserve it, but I want to try. Really try, not just go through the motions. What would that look like? I asked, genuine curiosity replacing my guard. She glanced back at the house where her parents were watching through the window. Probably therapy, honestly. Maybe together, maybe separately. I don't know. But I'm tired of being this person who needs to tear others down, especially you. Therapy is expensive, I said automatically, then caught myself, a faint blush rising to my cheeks. Sorry, that was a reasonable observation. It is expensive, but Trevor's insurance covers it. And honestly, our marriage could probably use it too. She gave a self-deprecating laugh. Turns out being constantly insecure and competitive doesn't make you a great partner. Trevor had come out to join us, car keys in hand. She's not wrong. I've been suggesting counseling for 2 years. You have. Jennifer looked at him in genuine surprise. Every time you spiral about not being good enough, or someone else doing better, which is approximately weekly. His tone was gentle despite the words, a quiet affection underlying the bluntness. I love you, Jen, but you're exhausting sometimes. Instead of getting defensive, Jennifer just nodded, a genuine admission of truth. I know. I'm exhausting to myself, too. Lucas was already in our car, playing on his phone, giving us space. I watched him for a moment, then turned back to my sister. Here's the thing, Jen. I don't need you to be perfect. I don't need you to have all the answers or be the successful one or whatever narrative you've built. I just need you to be real with me. Even when real is messy and jealous and petty, especially then, because I'm messy too. I'm controlling and secretive and I hold grudges. We're both works in progress. Jennifer wiped at her eyes, smudging her mascara. Coffee next week. I'll text you. Okay. But Jen, if we do this, We do it honestly. No more performances. No more performances, she agreed, a small, genuine smile finally breaking through. Trevor guided her toward their car, and I heard him say something that made her laugh, a rare laugh that reminded me of when we were kids. Maybe there was hope after all. In the car, Lucas waited until we were a few blocks away before speaking. That was intense. That's one word for it. Aunt Jennifer seemed really upset. She was. She is. I navigated through a yellow light. How are you feeling about all of it? He shrugged, the universal 9-year-old response to emotional complexity. I don't know. It was weird hearing you talk about all that money stuff. Are we really rich? The company has assets, yes, but we live the way we live because it's what works for us. But we could live differently if we wanted. I heard the real question underneath, the hesitant vulnerability. Are you unhappy with how we live? No, I like our house. I like my school. He trailed off, struggling for words. Sometimes kids at school talk about expensive stuff their parents buy them. I always figured we couldn't afford it, and now you know we can, but we don't. How does that feel? Confusing? Like, why wouldn't we get nice things if we can? I pulled into a parking lot, putting the car in park so I could look at him properly, sensing this was an important conversation. Do you remember when your friend Mason got that expensive gaming setup for his birthday? The one with the curved monitors and custom PC? That one? Do you remember what happened 3 months later? Lucas thought about it, a slight frown on his face. He barely uses it. He said he got bored. Exactly. Having things doesn't make you happy. Doing things, learning things, experiencing things, that's what matters. The money from the business means we have security and options. It means you can go to any college you want without worrying about debt. It means if you want to start a business someday, you can. It means we're safe. But not that we buy everything we want. Right? Because wanting things is infinite. There's always something newer, better, more expensive. If we start measuring our lives by what we own, we'll never be satisfied. He processed this, then asked, with an unexpected perceptiveness, is that why Aunt Jennifer is always unhappy? Because she measures like that. The question caught me off guard with its raw truth. Partly yes. She's comparing herself to everyone else constantly. It's exhausting. Do you compare yourself to people sometimes? I'm not perfect, but I try to compete with myself instead. Be better than I was last year. Make smarter decisions than I made last month. That kind of thing. That makes sense. He was quiet for a moment. Can I tell my friends about the buildings? Is that important to you? Kind of. Like, it's cool. My mom owns buildings. That's pretty awesome. I smiled at his enthusiasm, the easy pride. You can tell them. Just remember that what you do matters more than what I've done. You're not impressive because I'm successful. You're impressive because you're kind and smart and curious. Can I be impressive and have a cool mom who owns buildings? I suppose that's fair. We drove home, and Lucas chattered about his robotics club plans, the immediate drama already fading into something less urgent. Kids were resilient that way. But as we pulled into our driveway, he asked one more question. Mom, are you going to change how we live now? Since everyone knows, what do you think we should do? I think we're fine how we are, but maybe we could get a dog. I laughed, the sudden lightness a welcome contrast to the evening's emotional weight. You've been campaigning for a dog since you were 6. This has nothing to do with tonight. Worth a shot. He grinned at me, and I saw David in his smile, but also myself and something entirely his own. Tell you what, you keep your grades up. Show me you can handle the responsibility of robotics club, and we'll talk about it. Really? Really? But we're talking a rescue dog, not some expensive designer breed. Deal? He bounded out of the car and into the house, already Googling local animal shelters on his phone. The evening's tension completely forgotten. I sat in the car for a moment longer, processing everything that had happened, the echoes of words still reverberating in my mind. My phone buzzed. Jennifer. I meant what I said about therapy and trying. I'm going to call someone tomorrow. I typed back, good. Proud of you. Her response came quickly. Don't be proud yet. I haven't actually done anything. You admitted you need help. That's something. 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before her next message came through. I've been thinking about what you said, about needing me to fail. You're right. I've been rooting against you our whole lives, and I don't even know why. Therapy will help you figure it out. I hope so. Trevor's been patient, but I can tell he's tired of it. I'm tired of it, too. Another message. Thank you for not evicting my company out of spite. I know you could have. Bad business decision, I replied. Plus, your office manager is excellent. She always submits maintenance requests properly formatted. I'll let Patricia know you approve. She'll be thrilled or confused. Probably both. I smiled at my phone. Coffee next week. You pick the place. There's a new cafe near my office. They do these lavender lattes that are ridiculously overpriced. Perfect. Your treat since you're so successful and generous. I walked into that one. You really did. Inside, Lucas was already making a list of dog names, completely absorbed in this new possibility. I watched him for a moment, grateful that he could bounce back so easily from adult drama. Mom, do you like the name Rocket, or should we go with something classic like Buddy? We don't even have a dog yet, but we're going to get one. You said. I said we'd talk about it. Same thing. His confidence was absolute, and I found myself hoping he'd keep that certainty as he grew up, that the world wouldn't beat it out of him. My phone buzzed again. Mom, this time. Are you okay, sweetheart? I'm fine. Tonight was hard, but probably necessary. I'm sorry we didn't see what was happening between you two. You saw it. You just didn't know how to fix it. Nobody did. Your father wants to know if you need anything, money or help or... I could picture Dad pacing in the background, uncomfortable with emotional conversations, but desperate to do something useful. Tell Dad I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. And Mom, I love you. I love you too. Both my girls, I just want you to be happy. We're working on it. After I hung up, I found Lucas cross-referencing shelter websites with dog training guides. Did you know some shelters let you foster dogs first to see if they're a good fit? I did not know that. We should do that. Fostering. Then if the dog doesn't work out, it's not permanent. That's actually very mature thinking. He looked up, surprised by the compliment. I've been thinking about responsibility. Like you said, if I can handle a foster dog, that proves I can handle a real dog. When did you get so logical? I'm 12. I'm basically an adult. Basically, I agreed, hiding my smile. We drove home through streets lit by amber streetlights, past familiar houses and landmarks. Our rental house looked exactly the same as it had that morning, modest and unassuming. Inside, Lucas would do homework at our second-hand kitchen table. I'd review property reports on my aging laptop. Nothing about our daily life would physically change. But something had shifted anyway. The weight of Jennifer's assumptions of constantly being underestimated and pitted had lifted. I hadn't realized how heavy it had become until it was gone. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Thank you for not completely destroying me tonight. I know you could have. I typed back, family doesn't destroy family. Even when they're really tempted. Her response came quickly. Even when they hand you janitorial applications. Even then, though I'm keeping it. Framing it. Maybe you're terrible. I learned from the best. A pause. Then, coffee next week. I looked at Lucas, already absorbed in his phone, texting his friends about BattleBots and Robotics Club. He was fine. We were fine. We'd always been fine. Coffee sounds good, I typed back. Things wouldn't magically improve overnight. Jennifer would still be competitive, still need to prove herself. I would still guard my privacy, still choose simplicity over showing off. But maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to be sisters again instead of rivals. The lease renewal would happen in October. Hartwell and Associates would stay in the building, paying fair market rate, conducting business as usual, and Jennifer would never again make assumptions about my life based on the car I drove or the house I rented. Some lessons were expensive. This one had cost her nothing but pride, which seemed about right. Lucas looked up from his phone, a question in his eyes, completely unconcerned with property empires or family drama. Mom, can we get pizza tomorrow? Sure, bud. Cool. He went back to texting, a child thinking about pizza and robots. Exactly as it should be. What hidden truths do you think families keep from each other, and do you believe these secrets are more protective or destructive in the long run?